Good afternoon readers, it's Tilly here from Tilly's Shelf and I am here for a video that is inspired by the Picture This 2024 readathon. That is hosted by Shelley Swearigan and Jack at Spread Book Joy, and I have been absolutely loving this month the videos, the shorts that Jack has been doing, recommending a different picture book every single day. And Jack has been doing 30 picture books in 30 days. Well, I have, thanks to Picture This, acquired more or less 30 picture books in the last month, and I'm going to try and do them all for you in the space of 30 minutes. So we'll see how I get on. I will just say the prompts for this year are Joy, Night, Peach, Nature, Blue and Change, and I'm pretty sure you could meet all of those prompts by reading all of the books that I'm going to mention. They're not all recommendations, they're just all picture books that I have acquired. So let's see how quickly I can do these. So book number one is Paddington by Michael Bond, and that was illustrated by R.W. Alley. So with the inspiration of Picture This, I went to one of my local charity shops and I wanted to see whether they had any picture books, and they did. They had loads, and these books were all on offer for 30p each, which is why I got so many. So this is just a classic picture book that inspired obviously the recent popular film, and it's just got a really bright, cheerful tone to the illustrations and to the story as well. My copy is a bit the worse for wear, it's a little bit stained, but that's what happens to picture books. The next book that I picked up was Peepo by Janet and Alan Ahlberg. So I got this exclusively because Each Peach Pear Plum was always one of my absolute favourite children's picture books, and it's one that I've always loved reading aloud to like my younger cousins, any young children that I happen to be near. I love reading Each Peach Pear Plum just because it's got so much excellent like rhythm, rhyme and illustration. Peepo is slightly different. So Peepo has got these little peepholes, as you can see, and it's all about what can the baby see, and you have to spot what the baby's looking at on the other page. This is from, I think it's might be the 1950s. Let's see if I can quickly find it. It is, yeah, originally published in 1981, so that's actually later than I thought. It's a very, very old-fashioned family style. You can see the mum there in her apron doing all the domestic stuff, and everything kind of arranged in a very traditional sort of a way. I love this one because it's got like an old-fashioned coal shed, and where I live in the north, people did always have these old coal sheds, and when I was training as a nurse, you'd still go to people's houses that they'd taken their pension in coal, and there would just be stacks of coal outside. This is not so much what life is going to be like for a baby in the 21st century, but it's a bit of it's of its time. Next one, I'm not so keen on this one. So this is Nora's Wondrous Adventures, and I picked it up because I thought that the art looked really fun and really nice. This one would definitely fit the theme of night because it's all about Nora's dreams and the adventures that she has in her dreams. The problem for me with this picture book was that it doesn't really, the rhyme and the rhythm just isn't really there, and that's really, really important. In a picture book, if you've decided to use rhyme and rhythm, it should work well. It should be like Each Peach Pear Plum that doesn't miss a beat, and this one, even reading it aloud to myself, I was kind of really struggling to make it work, so it needed a bit more work, I think. So I think I will return that one to the charity shop. This is another one that I think I will be returning. This is called Ringtail, and that is by Karen Patkau. Oh, I should have said who Nora's Wondrous Adventures was by. Courtney Jones. And it does have really nice illustrations that are like a collage format, and I just love this this beautiful fox, and it's all about the raccoon. I couldn't remember what the animal was called for a minute. It's all about this raccoon and like how the raccoon goes out looking for food and stuff. I didn't find that the story actually really worked for me. I like the illustrations a lot more than the story, and I don't think it's one that would be very fun to read aloud just because of the way that it was written. So it's a good demonstration of how the different elements of a picture book have to work together quite closely. So yeah, that's less of a successful one to me. Next one then is Quentin Blake Mrs. Armitage and the Big Wave. And I got this definitely because I love Quentin Blake's like chaotic, dramatic illustrations. And this is about Mrs. Armitage trying to catch a wave, and she keeps waiting for the wave and realising that she needs more stuff. So she keeps swimming back to shore and picking up more and more stuff for her surfboard. So it just gets more and more complicated as time goes on. And I just thought it was really fun. And I just like his illustration style. Next one, this was another one that didn't work out so well for me, and I did get it exclusively because of the name, because it is Matilda, You're Amazing. And it just says illustrated by P.S. Brooks, but I don't know who it's by. And it says to Matilda, so they're assuming that you're giving it to a child called Matilda. And I was kind of hoping it would work for just having a character called Matilda, but yeah, you would really have to read this specifically to a child called Matilda, and presumably they made a whole series where you could just change the name on it and just give it to the child of that appropriate name. It's not a very inspiring story, but I thought it would be sweet. The next one, it would be a great crossover between Picture This and People April. So I think both the hosts were talking about how there are loads of picture books that are about real people, and this is one of them. This is I Can Be a Brave Adventurer by, oh no, that's the people who it's about. Can't actually see. Oh, Francis Lincoln. And this is about Amelia Earhart, Mary Anning and Ernest Shackleton, and talks about their lives as great adventurers and the things that they discovered or the things that they achieved, with a couple of like little fun activities in it, just as like a little bit of inspiration for children. So yeah, fits for People April as well. Next one is Meg and Mog, Meg's Cauldron. So I loved the Meg and Mog kind of series when I was little. So it was a treat to find some of these, like a lot of the books kind of really reminded me of my own growing up. And in this story, Meg's trusty cauldron breaks, and while it's being repaired, she gets a new fancy cauldron that can do anything. But unfortunately it does everything, whether they want it to or not. And it's just a comedy of how they cope with the cauldron doing all sorts of random things. So I do like Meg and Mog and the kind of the witchy, the cute witchy pictures with the cat as well. Next one is another one that I absolutely loved to death when I was small. Oh, Meg and Mog, who's that by? Doesn't say. Ah, Helen, Nicoll and Jan Pienkowski. This is another one that was a real, like, memory bringing me back to my childhood. So this is The Velveteen Rabbit by Margery Williams, illustrated by William Nicholson. And this, it's a classic. It's such an old picture book. I think this one, 1922, it was first published. And you can kind of tell because a key element in the story is the child gets scarlet fever, which is, it's something that's happened a few times recently just because of various like epidemiological things, but it's not really a disease that we worry about as much now as it was back in the 1920s, because now we have things like antibiotics. And this is about a toy rabbit and how the simple toy cuddly rabbit is so much better than all the mechanical toys, and how that toy rabbit sort of becomes real to the imagination and then magically becomes real. And I love it. And I had a favourite rabbit toy when I was little, so this was always like a favourite one for me. Next one is another classic. I think this was fairly new out when I was little. 1993, so yeah, this was new when I was young. And that is The Three Little Wolves and the Big Bad Pig by Eugene Trivizas and Helen Oxenbury. And this is kind of flipping the traditional fairy tale on its head. And instead of it being a big bad wolf, it's a big bad pig, and the wolves are trying to build a house that is strong enough that the pig can't get in, but the pig is quite resourceful and able to break down all of their houses. So in the end, the way that they work out how to kind of overcome the challenge of the pig has to be something completely different, and it has to be sort of about friendship, happiness and these beautiful flowers. So it's a really sweet children's book in that way. Next one was one that was recommended by Jack at Spread Book Joy, and this is We Are Going to Find the Monster by Malorie, Blackman and Dapo Adeola. And when I saw this one in the charity book selection, I thought I would definitely get a hold of that. And just because of the recommendation and because it just looks really fun. And it's about two kids that are just playing in the garden and they decide to go and find a monster. This really reminded me of We're Going on a Bear Hunt, because it's got a very similar kind of pattern of them kind of overcoming various obstacles as they're on their way to find the monster. And it's just done in a really endearing way, and I thought it was good. I'm just trying to add more representation into my picture book collection, and I think by buying a lot of them from the charity shop, I typically got older ones, and older ones typically do have less diversity and representation in that. So I think picking up more ones like this that are going to give me kind of like a more of a breadth in my picture book collection, there's more and more available now, is going to be really important. So yeah, We're Going to Find a Monster by Malorie, Blackman and Dapo, Adeola. Next one is, I thought this was really fun. I love dragons, so this is When the Dragons Came by Naomi, Kefford and Lynne Moore, illustrated by Benji Davis. And this is about a small town where everyone's sort of happy, doing their own thing, and then suddenly the dragons show up and they can't do what they normally do anymore. I'm kind of intrigued by the morals of this one, because in the end they all live happily ever after together, but only by the dragons kind of learning to live by the rules. So I'm kind of like, I've got mixed feelings about what it says about people kind of moving into a community, that they are forced to kind of adapt and go with what the majority want them to do. So yeah, I've got like, I'm not entirely sure about the morals, but I did kind of like the art and the kind of like the cheery dragon images. Next one is another quite old one, and that is Bringing the Rain to Kapiti Plain by Werner Ardemmer and illustrated by Beatrice Vidal. So I wasn't sure who the author was when I picked this up. I didn't really read these properly in the shop. I just kind of gathered a selection that I thought looked interesting. And it's based on an old folk tale, and it tells a story of a drought in that region. I think it's a South African folktale or somewhere similar to that region. So Werner Ardemmer was an American who had an interest in a sort of South African myths and legends. It is kind of interesting in the kind of the representation and the portrayal, but reading it, it's got really great poetry, and I guess it's like a way of showing like maybe a bit of a view of other countries and differences, and as long as you bring that into a bigger picture of different representations and portrayals, I think it's all right. But yeah, nice animals on the back there. And I do like stories that are based on folktales. Oh, that reminds me, I'm missing one. Okay, I'm missing one. Oh well. The next one is another absolute favourite of mine previously, and that is The Whales Song, and it's by Dean Sheldon and Gary Blythe, and I used to have this on a tape, and I still remember exactly what The Whales Song sounded like. So when I found this in the charity shop, I thought I absolutely need to have that. As you can see, it has been well loved by somebody's children, and this is a really beautiful story about a little girl and her, I think it's her grandmother. Her grandmother tells her about how the whales used to come and sing for her, and meanwhile there's another family member who's saying, oh, don't be ridiculous, don't be silly, you know, whales were useful for their blubber, they were just part of our kind of like not exactly industrial, but our economic life rather than being something magical. But she discovers that actually her grandmother is right, and you get this beautiful scene of the whales all breaching and dancing for her in the night, and it's just so heartwarming and really inspires like a love of the natural world. Next one then is The Owl and the Pussycat by Edward Lear, and that's illustrated by Victoria Bell, and this is just a very simple version of the classic rhyme that has just been illustrated with nice kind of brightly coloured cheerful illustrations, and the rhyme has got such a great kind of pattern to it, and it's really nice to read aloud, so I think this would be like a great one to share with a child, and just having the bright illustrations is fantastic. Right, next one then is a Dr. Seuss. That's ABC by Dr. Seuss. So like many people, I grew up with books like Green Eggs and Ham, so I picked this up just because it's, you know, Mrs. Seuss's classic, Dr. Seuss is classic children's literature stuff. This is going through the alphabet. I don't think it works as well as some of his other books, just because when you're trying to teach somebody the alphabet and you just start making up words, you potentially are going to confuse them. But it does have some quite good like wordplay and rhythms and stuff, and just really fun wild illustrations. So I think it's a good one. Next one is a more recent classic, I suppose. It's from the Guess How Much I Love You series. And this is Guess How Much I Love You in the Summer by Sam Brankney, illustrated by Anita Jerram. And instead of it being How Much Do I Love You, it's pick your favourite. What's your favourite blue thing? What's your favourite green thing? And obviously the happy ending is what's your favourite brown thing? And it's you, for the little nut brown rabbit. So yeah, it's very sweet. Cheerful, happy animals, kind of more of like a cutesy one, I suppose. Next one is another maybe more traditional one, and that is Tigger Comes to the Forest. It's an extract from A.A. Mills, obviously the Winnie the Pooh, I can't remember what it's called, Animals of something wood, the general Winnie the Pooh series anyway, illustrated by E.H. Shepard, and yeah, it's just got the classic illustrations and the classic kind of story. I'll see if I can find a nice example of the picture. Just Tigger and Pooh, the original style one, not the kind of more modern styled ones. And this is when Tigger first arrives, and Tigger says, oh, I like everything, but then it turns out as they're going from place to place trying to find something that Tigger can eat, Tigger doesn't like everything, and in fact Tigger is quite a fussy eater. But Tigger gets to know all of the different animals. He gets to know Eeyore, he gets to know Kanga and Roo, and you just get this little insight into what all of the characters are like. So it's a nice introduction to the Winnie the Pooh kind of character set. Next one is, again, a modern classic. That's The Gruffalo by Julia Donaldson and Alex Scheffler. This is another one that came out, I think, more or less came out when I was little, yeah, 1999. And now it's just, it's like a whole industry by itself. So I think I've already got various Gruffalo like clothing items, just because it's such a popular series, and it starts with this book about the little mouse, and the little mouse is going through the forest and facing loads of threats, loads of predators, and the mouse manages to persuade them all to leave him alone because he's got a scary friend called the Gruffalo, thinking that the Gruffalo doesn't exist, when obviously it turns out that somehow it does. So that it's just it's a well put together children's story, I think, and that's why it's so popular, and that's why it's sparked such a following. The next one is another old one. You can see what the theme is here. It's just like the ones that are loved so much that they will turn up in a charity shop, and that is Old Bear by Jane Hissey. I'm pretty sure that I had this one. This is about some toys. It's like Toy Story before there was Toy Story, really. It's about some toys that are playing together, and they remember Old Bear, and Old Bear is not around anymore, and they decide to go on a hunt to see if they can find Old Bear, and that takes them like up in the sky. It takes them trying to like jump to the ceiling, and eventually they kind of manage to fly and find their way to be reunited with their dear friend Old Bear. And poor Old Bear thought he had been forgotten and neglected, but his friends come and find him, so it's a sweet one. Next one is a slightly newer one, and that is Otto Blotter Bird Spotter, and that is by Graham Carter. And I picked this one because I really like the funky illustrations and all of the birds on the front. I thought it was gonna have some like ornithological details, but it's not really, because all of the birds are quite fantastical. So it's not like you're gonna teach your child about birds with it. And basically Otto doesn't like spotting birds, which is what the rest of his family wants to do. He wants to go and be an explorer. And while he's exploring, he finds some strange clues, and eventually he finds a baby bird all by itself. And the baby bird becomes his best friend, but it grows and it grows and it grows, and it becomes the biggest bird ever. And at this point, Otto realises that his baby bird has got a family, and he needs to find the baby bird's family, because the baby bird will be lonely without them. So he enlists the help of his friends to reunite the bird with his family. It's sweet, it's endearing. It's not the best one ever, but it's definitely one that you could get a little bit of enjoyment out of. Next one is another good People April crossover, and that is Camille and the Sunflowers by Lawrence Arnholt. So this is about Van Gogh, and I really love the way that the illustrations sort of bring in Van Gogh's artwork in a way that really fits with the story. And it's about Van Gogh's stay in a village and the different family members that he draws, based around Camille, who's the youngest one, who is this one, this little boy, and sort of how he's working on his art, but he's not very popular in the village because they don't sort of understand what he's doing and his art style and everything. And yeah, and how things go for him basically. I like this because it tells you at the end, and it talks about how obviously Van Gogh's life doesn't have the happiest ending, and I think it's nice to be honest about that in a children's book in a way that's quite sort of approachable and age appropriate, that's managed in quite a good way, and then talks about how his art became much more popular and accepted later on, so it was sort of before his time, so that's a nice like way of telling it. And this is part of a series, so there's ones about Monet, Picasso, Leonardo and Degas as well. The next one is more of a like explaining the world book, I suppose, and so is the one after. It's What Did I Look Like When I Was a Baby by Jean Willis and Tony Ross, and it just goes through different members of the animal kingdom. And he's like, what did I look like when I was a baby? You look like your granddad, bald and wrinkly for the human. And then it just goes through various different ones, and it shows you a picture of what they looked like when they were little. It goes on and on until it gets to the frog. And that's when it gets really confusing, but it then explains about tadpoles. So that's kind of cool, and a little bit about nature. Next one then is another one that's sort of explaining a bit about the world, and that is Why Is the Sky Blue? And I can't see an author, just says book time. Compiled and written by Geraldine Taylor and illustrated by Amy Schindler. And the reason I picked up this one is because it is interactive. You have got these cool little flaps. Oh my god, if I can open it. And it just asks a lot of questions, some of which I'm not sure that kids would really ask, but I guess I don't know that much about young kids, so we'll find out. But yeah, you can just like peel back, if you can, bits of petals to find the answers to the questions. So I thought that looked like a fun kind of book to engage with, I guess. Next one, which is the last one that I got from the charity shop, and that is The Lighthouse Keeper's Cat. I think I had one called The Lighthouse Keeper's Lunch. But yeah, this is The Lighthouse Keeper's Cat by Rhonda and David Armitage. And it talks about how the lighthouse keeper's cat feels that he's not being appreciated, so he goes off on his own and tries to find like a new place where he will be fully appreciated, but in the end he realises that the lighthouse and home is the only place for him, and he finds a way to stay there happily. So yeah, that's a sweet one in the Lighthouse Keeper series. So now we're getting on to the ones that I actually bought new, and the one that I'm missing is The Skull by John Classon, and that is a really beautiful book, and I can't believe that I haven't managed to bring it out. That's another one that's recommended by Jack at Spread Book Joy, and it's a I wish I had it. It's a fairy tale retelling about a young girl running off into the forest, and she finds this really old house that is kind of haunted by a skull and separately a skeleton. So a skeleton without a head and a skull, and she has to kind of try and find a way to like make the skull safe and happy, because the skeleton's kind of the bad guy in the story. That's really dark and like slightly dangerous for a children's book, but I love it because I think that not all children's books should be the kind of like Guess How Much I Love You, sunshine, happiness, rainbows. I think there should be a little measure of darkness and superstition and witchcraft and stuff in children's books. I think that's a great way of kind of introducing those themes to children, and it's also something that's quite enjoyable for the adult to read as well. But one that I do have is I Want My Hat Back by John Classon. So this isn't mine. I bought this as a gift, so I'm going to give it to a family member who is having a baby fairly soon, and the reason I got this one is because I absolutely love it. It's one of my favourite children's books because it's so wicked. It's just got a fantastic, well, that's the receipt, a fantastic sense of humour, and it's like, how many children's books do you get where there's like suggested murder in it? So the bear is looking for his hat. He goes hunting for his hat. He keeps asking people, have you seen my hat? And all of them are saying, no, 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 no hat's here, no hat's here. And then he realises that he has seen his hat, and it was being worn by somebody else. So he goes back and he gets his hat and he pretends that he has had nothing to do with the person who had stolen his hat. And it's just a fantastic sense of humour. It's so dark, it's so brilliant, and I always get this. If I need to get somebody a present specifically for their small child, I will always get this one because I just think it's great. Okay, so now we're getting on to ones that I have bought for myself previously, and this one is one that I have had for much longer. This was not a People April, a Picture This, sorry, book, but it's one of the picture books in my collection, and it made it up to 30, so I brought it in. That's The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. And this was really, really popular a while ago, I think because the pictures are just really Instagrammable. I think they got shared a lot online. I have to say, when I got it, they're just like really nice, is it ink and wash or line and wash drawings. I was a little bit disappointed in the story. I felt like there wasn't really enough to the story. It's just kind of like sweet phrases with nice pictures, but it is really enjoyable to look at, and it's just a great kind of book in terms of a work of art. But yeah, just not a very, I don't think it would really hold the attention of a child very well, but maybe you've read it to a child and you can tell me that I'm wrong. Yeah, but the art is really lovely. So he goes, this boy kind of goes on a journey and he meets various animal friends on his way. So then, because like I said, a lot of these books I felt were kind of like classic. They might be slightly older, they might not have a huge like variety and diversity within them, and I kind of wanted to treat myself, and I ended up going to the Bookish Type, which is a fantastic independent bookstore in Leeds that focuses on LGBTQ+ specialist books, and they do have a picture book section at the back. And I went in, I was actually looking for a specific picture book called And Tango Makes Three, and that is about two male penguins that looked after an egg, and it's based on a true story that really happened. And they had it, but I just got carried away with other books, so I didn't end up getting that. So the first one that I got was Eric Carle, called Mr. Seahorse. This is a board book, so it's fantastic because they're supposed to be kind of durable and portable, and you can see it's got these really nice window pages, so you can find what's kind of camouflaged behind the window page, and that goes through every few pages. You get another window page. That's another one there. And you have to find the hidden fish behind it. So Mr. Seahorse is about all of the different kinds of fish that, where the male fish, the daddy fish, does most of the childcare, or does most of the egg care. So Mr. Seahorse is looking after the eggs for Mrs. Seahorse, or he asks Mrs. Seahorse, like, how can I help with our children? And she's like, oh, you better take care of the eggs. And he goes along and he meets all of these other kinds of fish, where the male fish is the one that has the eggs. And he's just going along being like, oh, you're doing a good job. And they're like congratulating each other, like, oh, well done. You're being a good, yeah, you're helping out. That's great. And I just thought that was really sweet. And I had no idea that was so common in the marine world. I'd heard of it for seahorses, but I really hadn't heard of it for all of these other kinds of fish as well. So I thought that was a nice little one for dads, but also just generally. And then I got another one that was recommended by, oh, that's a Bookish Type bookmark. Another one that was recommended by Jack. Heavy influence from Jack in my picture book reading, as you can tell. And that is Julian is a Mermaid by Jessica Love. Sorry, that's my dog making slightly squeaky noises there. And this is a fantastic book. It is about a little boy called Julian, it's about young Julian, and he is staying with his grandma, and he sees some mermaids, and he decides, look at these are the mermaids that he sees on the train, and he wants to be a mermaid. So he goes home and he puts himself together a beautiful mermaid costume, and when his gran comes and sees him, that's the rest of his mermaid costume. When his gran comes and sees him, she just turns away and walks away, and he doesn't know whether she's going to be annoyed. This is her walking away, and then she comes back and she gives him some beautiful bead necklace, and she takes him to a parade full of mermaids, and it's just a really nice, joyful, happy story of like him just having fun with his grandma. And the final book, I think I might actually get this in under 30 minutes, is The Woodcutter and the Snow Prince, and that is written by Ian Eagleton and illustrated by David Ortu. And this one, when I was on the London BookTuber meetup, I think it was Chatty, the Mad Chatter, from the channel The Mad Chatter, was picked this up, and it was somebody else that she was talking to about it, and we were looking at this amazing map that it's got at the start, where it's got all of these like places like the Palace of Fear and the Woods of Wickedness, and we were talking about how amazing that map is, and it's a fantastic mystical story that is based on a folktale again, and it's about this young boy, the woodcutter, and how he goes to rescue the Snow Prince, and how they become kind of great friends and just kind of live happily together at the end. And the art is just fantastic. I just think that's phenomenal, fantastical artwork. There are some beautiful ice bears in it. There we go. Which, as a lover of Northern Lights, I definitely love. And yeah, so beautiful ice bears, beautiful story, and just like, it's a nice, I liked it because it's a really nice Christmas book that isn't overly kind of like Christian, if that makes sense. I know a lot of them aren't, and a lot of them are like about presents and gifts and family, but I liked how this was maybe a slightly different kind of story theme setting. So yeah, I thought that just was beautiful, so I ended up buying that. So, if we discount the introduction time, I think I have managed under 30 minutes. So thank you very much for sitting through all of these 30 different picture books with me. And I hope if you've been participating in Picture This, you have been enjoying it as much as I have, because I think it's been a fantastic, great fun read along that has just really helped me to get enthusiastic about picture books and start my picture book collection. So thanks very much to the hosts, and let me know your favourite picture books and your recommendations that you think I should add to my picture book library. Thank you, goodbye.